happy to see some familiar faces and names that we have here right now. So, some of you may have already heard about this set of guidelines we released a year ago. And if you have a second device with you ready at the moment, you can scan the QR code that you see on the screen to access copies of the guidelines in different languages. You can also access them here in the link that I'm going to put in the chat. These guidelines, in partnership with ChildFund Korea and with the support of Plan International Asia and Save the Children Philippines, we produced the child participation guidelines for online discussions with children, which is mainly targeted for use of child rights organizations and institutions like us who are working for and with children. Some background on the guidelines. The development was informed by children, although somewhat indirectly. We looked at the evaluations of online activities with children done by our member organizations and also by an activity done by a government body. We asked the inputs of child participation experts within our network, including Hong Kong Committee on Children's Rights, and also Child Rights Connect, who provided a number of inputs to the guidelines informed by their experience in providing support during the online sessions between the CRC committee and the children. And in developing the guidelines, we recognize that we are not starting from scratch. You already have your own child participation guidelines and child safeguarding protocols, and these just need an update or a few adjustments to be more applicable online. We also acknowledge that while we were drafting around the third to fourth quarter of 2020, there were already available resources that we can complement. And these resources are mentioned in the guidelines. You can see them, I think, on the first few pages. Throughout 2020, CRC Asia was not able to hold our own regular regional children's meeting, but we supported child participation spaces like the COVID under 19 Global Survey, and the national level or community level activities by child-led groups supported by our member organizations. We also became an audience to a number of international, regional, or national online events, webinars, and discussions, and the observations and reflections we had from attending these online activities with children also informed the development of the guidelines. Also, our initial plan for the guidelines is for it to focus on online child safeguarding, but with the issue of digital divide being highlighted by the pandemic, we saw the need to talk about inclusion, to take into consideration how we can contribute in closing the digital divide in terms of access to devices or connectivity, or in terms of gender and disability, or when it comes to the skills of children and the available support from the adults. We also think that the guidelines should be viewed as a working document with room for further improvement as we adapt to the environment that is constantly changing and as we gain more experience in using the online platforms to support children and empower them. And today I will be able to touch on some of the lessons learned and experiences in implementing the guidelines since we released it last year. Okay, so in this slide, you can see the objectives of the guidelines, with the main one to create child-friendly, inclusive, and safe platforms for online participation of children. One of the specific objectives is to help ensure that children and adults are properly prepared for the online activities. For example, we have a section there about preparatory activities. And there's also a part highlighting the importance of informing children beforehand. Another objective is to ensure that children are empowered to co-create these online platforms and keep themselves protected. Children can have various roles in their online activities. They can be speakers, participants, facilitators, co-organizers, or a combination of these. And 2 years into the pandemic, we are able to see more online spaces exemplifying these different roles that children can take, especially in those spaces supported by civil society organizations. The guidelines also provide some ideas on how we can facilitate children's co-creation of the platforms, from informing the activity objectives to designing the program to developing the ground rules and even identifying what platform they prefer to use or what schedule works for them. In implementing the guidelines in one of our projects, for instance, we had to discuss with children their school and exam schedules in setting up the meeting dates, which entailed extending the project period and also bargaining about that extension with our funding partner. And on setting up the time of one of our activities, you had to be mindful of the prayer time or house chores time in different time zones, because that's the nature of online activities. We are working in different time zones. The guidelines also prompts us to reflect how to make sure that children from different backgrounds and situations are included. There are several questions there to ask ourselves to help us in the decision making. And lastly, the guidelines have some suggestions on what we can do to address the inherent risks in online space and ensuring that the children involved in the online activities are protected. Well, with my limited presentation time, I'll only be able to talk about some parts of the guidelines and share our experiences either in the development or in the implementation of the sections. I'll start with the point about using hybrid methods because of the digital divide. Online activities could limit the participation of some groups of children and exacerbate their marginalization. There were a couple of examples of hybrid methods mentioned in the guidelines on page 5 of the English version. And the example there about the online survey stemmed from our experience in doing the COVID under 19 global survey, which a number of CRC Asia members took part in also. You can see in my slide the below a screenshot of the video message developed by children for the second ministerial conference on civil registration and vital statistics in the Asia and the Pacific. And to arrive at that video, we had a number of activities at the country level and then at the regional level. At the country level, we employed hybrid methods. Some member organizations and partner organizations conducted face-to-face group discussions. Some did it online. Some had one-on-one face-to-face interviews, and some did a combination of these. Another example of a hybrid method is bringing the children to the offices where the connection is more stable. And I think you may have done this yourselves and have seen this being done. In our experience during the regional level activity, the regional forum on 29 May, referred to in the screenshot, we had a Team Afghanistan or Team Samoa connecting as a group to our Zoom meeting. And it could also be the other way around. One of our networks shared that what they do is that the adults are the ones who go to the houses of the children, bringing all the digital devices, the laptop, the earphones, and the pocket Wi-Fi for the children to use. From our experience and from what we have gathered so far, the use of hybrid methods help, but children still long to have face-to-face activities. They put comments in our evaluation form saying that I wish we could have done this in person, or I miss having an activity done like this face-to-face. I also want to mention this part about ensuring the inclusion of children from different backgrounds and situations. Prior to the pandemic, some organizers, well, mostly from the government, they require the ability to speak in English as one of the criteria for children to participate in activities that have a regional or international component. During the pandemic, what we saw as the online equivalent of that criteria is the requirement for the children to have a device and a stable internet connection. And one of the ways to counter this is for the organizers or supporting partners to anticipate these barriers and identify possible solutions, even if the solutions may require what is mentioned as the second point you see on my slide, changes in our organizational procedures and operations. You may have had the same experience as us. We found ourselves discussing about providing budget for communication or internet data package allowance for children. We had to answer questions like, how much should the allowance be? Because there are different rates per country. What if the children do not have a bank account? Do we transfer to the account of their parents? what sort of financial documents do we need if we use digital wallets to transfer these allowances and things like that. And these are important points for the discussion for us as CSOs because as one government agency in the Philippines, for instance, they said that as much as they want to provide communication allowance to children, they are unable to do so because of the government regulations on procurement. So the partner civil society organizations had to be the ones to provide this type of support being requested by the children. Another thing that is also coming up now in our discussion is the provision of meal allowances, because during face-to-face meetings, we provide snacks or lunch or dinner to the children. In one of our activities, I remember one child commenting on the chat, I miss the buffets during activities like this. So what about now when it's online? Do we provide meal allowance? Do we send them food through food delivery? And these adjustments that we have to make in order to address these questions may require board resolutions to update our policies. And we may also need to haggle or bargain with our funding partners to accept expenses like these. The guidelines mention several points on online child safeguarding, but right now I'm going to focus on just 2 points. The first on assessing and managing risks in consultation with children. And one example is during the national launch of the global study on children deprived of liberty, our member organization, Child Rights Coalition Cambodia or CRC Cambodia, worked with child-led groups in organizing the event. It's a sensitive issue, and CRC Asia shared several instances when they had to find that balance between child participation and safeguarding. Several things came up, and some were not explicitly mentioned in the guidelines. One of these is presenting the children with options on camera use. During the launch, we had a child speaker who experienced being imprisoned. So privacy and confidentiality is crucial in this event attended by the government officials. We had to agree with the child speaker if he wants to record a video message or deliver a message live. And if that, he can wear a face mask, or we can angle the camera so that the audience will be able to see his torso, but not his face, or we can use audio only with the camera turned off. Ultimately, they decided to use a recorded video message. But what we picked up on that experience is sharing with children these options on camera use. So whenever we do group photos or group screenshots, we mentioned that you can turn off your video or point the camera somewhere else, or just show a finger heart. Another example, last year, CRC Asia held a session during the World Congress on Justice with Children. You can see the faces of our speakers there this morning, just a few minutes ago, Amian and Lucho. And also in that session, we had a child human rights defender from Myanmar as speaker. As you may all know, Myanmar is not a safe place for human rights defenders at the moment. So we had to put several measures. In relation to the use of camera, our young speaker wanted to deliver her message and the messages of other children live. So what happened was she had her camera turned on, but she wore a surgical mask and she looked generic with her hair in a ponytail and wearing a plain shirt against the virtual background image provided by the conference. So it's difficult to identify her. Another point on child safeguarding is the identification of participants. We ask children not to put their full names, and we ask everyone to have a tag or label representing their role in our connection IDs. This is the equivalent of using color-coded ID lays or name tags during face-to-face meetings to identify the attendees, which is helpful for everyone. For example, from my experience in facilitating an online discussion, it can be difficult to differentiate who are the adult mentors or the child delegates, because some adult mentors look younger than their age, which is nice, but some adults also could not help themselves in taking the floor, even if it's the time for the children. So with the help of the tag in connection IDs, I was able to control that and ensure that the space is given to the children. There is another side to this advice not mentioned in the guidelines, and that is the use of pseudonyms, not only for children, but also for adults supporting them. Once or twice, we decided to use pseudonyms also for adult human rights defenders supporting the children, even if the meeting is not recorded and the entry to the online meeting room is very much controlled, because part of safeguarding children human rights defenders is protecting the adult human rights defenders working with them. And I want to mention that the guidelines are available in different Asian languages: Korean, traditional Chinese, and Bahasa Indonesia. We translated this with the help of our members who are here right now. Thank you very much. We also got a request to develop a summarized version, so we did that as well. And right now we are working on the animated videos. There will be 3 videos, one on safeguarding children, one on designing the program, and one on online facilitation and moderation. We're done with the first video and we are in the process of finalizing the last 2. We welcome translation to other languages, and if you are interested, please feel free to reach CRC Asia. Yes, and as I end, I also want to share that if we have time earlier, I hope that you can share your own experiences, which we can learn from, and conducting online discussions with children and activities with them, because it's a learning process, and we hope to hear from you as well. So that's it from my side.